Wake that up.
LA's #1 hip-hop morning show is Nick Cannon Mornings on Power 106.
Nick Cannon Radio. This is an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to be having a real conversation, an honest conversation with our mayor. And before we jump into it, I want to say I appreciate his time, his energy, knowing there could be many other things that he could be doing right now, but he is speaking with the people. And to be the youngest mayor in Los Angeles history.
That was way back, man. Now I'm getting older every day.
a fellow musician, a fellow father,
Yeah.
Mayor Garcetti. How you holding up, first and foremost, man?
These are the toughest days, certainly of my professional career. I'm personally heartbroken, but I always point out to folks, this compares nothing to the pain of being Black in America,
Right.
To holding the trauma that we have had for centuries. So I try to balance those things. I won't lie to you. It's tough, man. It's tough for everybody out there. Our hearts break. It's really tough decisions, but we're called to these moments. And look, I think that we are the right city at the right time to lead this nation in the pain that we're in. So that's what's keeping me going. We
truly need your leadership. And like I said in the introduction, as a fellow father, knowing you have a daughter, man, I know having to explain to my children has been interesting and difficult at times. But to know that, you have peaceful protesters outside of your home. What do you say as a father to your child in times like this? Well, I usually just keep my, family private. It's one of the last things I have, but I will say this because I have an extraordinary daughter and an amazing wife. Yeah. She's so strong. She gets it. She knows that this is part of a democracy. She told me the other day, she said, "Daddy, I hate so much those officers that killed George Floyd." In the same way that kids right now are all saying, "I hate COVID-19, right? On one level. Then she went to this and she could see this moment. She's like, "I hate that happened to this man." She's only 8 years old. To contain that and to be composed. And when there's, protesters or wherever, I mean, she's like, she understands that's necessary, that we live in a place where we do have the right to do that and we should exercise that. She's walked in protests before for women's rights and for environment and for racial justice. So she gets it. Right. But I think all of us as parents are called to this moment to make sense, to say, look, sweetie, and this is one thing I said, words are really important. That's what you see out there. But what they're actually asking for is for all of us, especially mayors, but each one of us to take actions now. Stop a system that keeps killing Black men and Black women and the other injustices we have. And so I'm so blessed to have an amazing daughter. Oh, that's amazing, man. And I share those sentiments when I speak to my kids in that same way. I feel like, they do. Oh yeah, this next generation gets it. They understand, And I say you put two kids in a sandbox, they don't care what color they are. They're gonna still play with each other. But you said that call to action and for us to take responsibility. One of the things that we heard the people chanting outside your home was to defund police. Now, when you hear that, what does that mean? I mean, my understanding, again, and forgive me for my abolitionist mindset at times, and can be quite radical. But when I know that, part of our budget, $3 billion are being spent on law enforcement, that to me, I feel like that could be shifted elsewhere to resources in our community. So when you hear defund police, how do you respond to that? Well, I think it resonates that our priorities and our principles in this country have often been wrong. Right. It's not an either or, but, for instance, we spend $7 billion on transit in LA. We spend $8 billion on education. We spent $1 billion that didn't exist before on homelessness and housing, the biggest growth of our budget, $12 billion on health. So I don't want people to always slice and dice and say, oh my gosh, all we spend money on is police. But that said, and if in this moment, we can't step up and say that it should be as high a priority, if not higher, for us to make sure every young person has a job in the summer. Right. If we can't say things like we need to have healing and mental health in not just communities that have been traumatized, but even for our peace officers,
to make sure they don't carry around mental health issues that
Right.
manifest on the street. I actually agree with the sentiment.
Right.
You know, I'm the person who then has to balance a real budget. But I promise you, when I said I hear you yesterday, it's because I feel it myself. So I'm working very hard with our city council, talking to, you know, those who represent our police officers, talking to our police commission, because it's civilians who oversee our police commission, thanks to reforms of the past.
Right.
It's not a department that runs itself. And we are going to have to shift some of our dollars.
Right.
And so now it's the pencils about how much, where. Do we take some from policing? Do we take some from the fire? Do we take some from our public works? Do we take some from wherever? But all of us have to sacrifice to make sure we're investing in not just creating peace, because a lot of people say, when's this going to die down? When are we going to have peace?
Right.
We have to build peace and invest in peace
Indeed.
for a longer moment than just right now.
Indeed. Now, I love something that you just said, and you said peace officers. And one thing that I've been speaking with some of my people call me too radical, and I say just because a lot of this propaganda, doing away with the word police and replacing it with peace, like getting rid of police officers and calling them peace officers. And then we go, as we know, I mean, I feel like I just got my degree in criminology this year, so I have a lot of these statistics in my mind. But knowing in the 1800s when Robert Peel said that the police are the public and the public are the police, and he, as the founder of modern policing, that idea of that word going back to, you know, slave patrols and slave codes, it's a scary word. And when you hear things like law enforcement, to enforce the law, why do we even need to enforce a law opposed to uphold a law?
Right. These things matter. And I think they matter for a new generation, as well as some of the folks in past generations that serve as our peace officers. You know, these are human beings too. I've been with their families when they've courageously stepped up and tried to say, hey, to a young man, let's not destroy our community, and then got shot and killed like we saw with Officer Diaz last year.
Yeah,
and
painful.
You know, I know the pain that they hold. I know how good in their heart. I saw a police union here condemn the killing, the lynching that we saw in Minneapolis, which to me was a brave step forward. And if we only just say, okay, you guys are all whatever, insert insult.
Right.
We need to figure a way to humanize this profession. But to your point, we also have to uphold expectations that you are to build peace, keep peace. Like, I'll give you one example. We have something called community safety partnership. It started in our public housing developments. And instead of a police officer being assigned there for like a year or two for law enforcement, and, you know, oh, that's where a lot of crimes are committed, it's tough, go earn your stripes. Instead, they get a 5-year assignment. And they mentor young people, and they learn each other's names, and they just walk around and talk with families. And, you know, I've talked to residents there who said, I used to see the police as the enemy. And now when my brother died, they came with flowers.
Wow.
The relationship that start to build become totally different. So if a young person does something stupid, and I did things that were stupid when I was young, sure, you did, every young person
Absolutely.
does.
I'm still doing stupid stuff, man.
And you're still young, don't worry. But, you know, some people die as a result of that. Whereas when you have relationships, you can say, hey, I know him. I'll figure it out. Let's get together. Let's have accountability. Let's help that person who might be in pain to heal. They don't even have a mother and father around right now. Like, there but for the grace of God go I. So we do have to transform the language that we use. I love that. Upholding laws, not enforcing them. Peace officers, not police officers. And even today, I'll tell you a small thing I was proud of, because I told my police commanders, we need to de-escalate on the street. There's been some heroism out there, and there should be accountability for anybody who's done wrong things out there, even in these tough moments, and there will be. But take off the riot helmets right now.
Right.
The first couple nights we had bottles and bricks, and you need to protect yourself. We had a police officer nearly killed because he had his skull cracked. But right now, in a peaceful protest, if that's all they see, then that's all that they will feel. So these things are happening, and we need people to embrace. I love the hugs, the knees that are taken. Some people are saying police should be fired for taking a knee. BS. We should all be taking a knee. I took a knee yesterday.
We saw that. We thank you for taking
that knee. Where's your humanity if you don't take a knee? So
Indeed.
I love how you framed it.
And these images, I mean, a lot of times, like you said, and I thank you for that. And you being a multicultural mayor, and knowing that a lot of this stuff is perpetuated and comes from fear. So when we see things like the National Guard, or we even hear our president, talk about, releasing vicious dogs and things like a lot of times, and even these curfews, these sundown curfews are reminiscent of not only the civil rights movement, but even prior to that, where it felt like we were being patrolled instead of being a part of a community. And I love the fact that you spoke about, police actually or officers actually being from the community, because I think one of the goals is to autonomously uphold the law within ourselves, and if the community has the resources that we need, crime will go down. I think even in the midst of a pandemic, which we've actually experienced, that some of our more dangerous considered neighborhoods are the ones that have been the most peaceful and upholding the law and standing firm and staying, keeping social distance, staying home. So I think we've shown as a people that we can uphold the law in our communities and not have to be overseen.
That is exactly right. And if there's one silver lining of this very difficult moment, people are seeing the power of people. We don't, for instance, let me say curfew. It's going to be, I said the county put a 6 o'clock curfew, which I was never for. They're in charge of the entire county. They overrule cities. It's going to be moved up till 9 tonight, and I hope that we can get rid of it soon.
Thank you.
Second, National Guard have done really important work. I said I'm not going to put them in South LA because there's nothing happening in South LA.
At all. Thank you. Say that, Mayor. There's nothing happening in South LA.
Like they're there to, they went to in front of some buildings in downtown Fairfax to secure those. They're doing what they've needed to be done. They got hugged. They took knees. And we need to also let them get back to their lives as soon as possible, too.
Indeed.
And I look forward to that. But to the last point, you're right. This is on all of us. We have to transform a sense of who is responsible. And I've never met a police officer who wouldn't embrace this idea, too. They want crimes to be prevented before they happen. They want us to intervene in young people's lives before they're called on. And they want us all to take responsibility to keep the peace.
Right.
And that doesn't happen automatically. What I say as mayor is we have to invest in that. For instance, 10 years ago, we didn't have gang reduction youth development programs. These are former folks who have been criminally justice involved. And I've expanded by 50% as mayor, who go out there and keep the peace and give jobs to folks and say, it doesn't matter what you did in your past. It only matters where you want to go in your future. They are as important peacekeepers as somebody with a badge and a gun. And so if we don't invest dollar for dollar, at least more than $1, a couple dollars over here for every bit that we invest in policing, we won't have peace. And so that's why this moment calls for us to do that, shift our thinking, roll this back, trust people, and get back to not evoking the worst chapters in American history, but writing the best one.
Right. And we appreciate having this type of dialogue and discourse and really just a real honest conversation. We've spoken many times. And, on the show, I opened up the phone lines. I allowed people to protest on air peacefully. And I said, what should we ask Mayor Garcetti? And there was a lot of appreciation for what you were doing, but also there was a lot of concern for the messaging, not coming from you, but from the law enforcement. And obviously, as you know, specifically the chief of police, when, the statement that Chief Moore made carelessly, and he said that he misspoke. But still, when you hear certain words, and of course, as we spoke about propaganda, messaging, things that the media latch on to, when you hear that he's saying, the blood of George Floyd is on the protesters, that stuff hurts. That's the stuff that resonates. And
and let me correct one quick thing, because he said the looters. That was wrong.
Right.
He never said the word protester, and he corrected the looters because they ain't the same. But
that's true.
It keeps getting resaid that he said protesters, never said protesters. But I just want
either way, we know it was wrong. And
absolutely, 100%, 100%.
And because and when it comes to and knowing the difference between looters and protesters is definitely something that we hope that the law enforcement can step up and own, because that's another thing that we see, the images on the news. We see the confusion where the law enforcement doesn't know who's looting or based off there's profiling. Even in that statement in his apology, Chief Moore used the term, he categorized. And I think
Yeah.
categorized can be replaced with profiling in that sense of this is another thing that we have to fix when it comes to what a person looks like. Therefore, that's how we feel they behave in our, in humanity, in our city.
So 100%. Look, I expect that every police officer, from the newest recruit who's now on the line to my chief of police, be held up to a high standard.
Indeed.
I met Mike Moore when he was actually in charge of cleaning this department up as a captain in Rampart after the Rampart scandal, if you remember that.
Right, indeed.
So he is true a reformer. I'm glad that he said what he said to correct it, but he's got to own that. And as I said, if I believe that was in his heart, he would not be the chief of police. And I want people to hear that loud and clear. But It's not just on a chief of police. It's actually on me, the police commission, to enact with actions and not just words what 21st century policing means. Let me walk through a few of those things. For instance, why don't we have mental health training for all of our officers, not just 20%?
Yes.
I'm proud we've done implicit bias training for every officer. That's one of the first places in the nation to do that, to look at our own prejudice in our hearts and how we act on that. But that has to be ongoing now, not just a one-time deal. What can we do too to make sure that we stop textual stops on the streets? When I heard that was happening in South LA, I said no more, because it might not be stop and frisk on the street. It might be in a car, but that is wrong. And that's what traumatizes Black men and men of color in our communities. And it has to stop. It's about, putting people into a Cal Gang database, as we just saw recently, without even them being qualified to be there. And we should ask what sort of database we want to have that, as you said, categorizes people. And as we've seen in years past, you can never get out of the database if you want to get into it. What can we do to have a no hire list across the state of California so that bad cops can't go from one place to another? What do we have for independent prosecutions when clearly police officers have broken the law? I don't think that should be done by local prosecutors. They fail to prosecute enough. And so give that to the state AG or an independent office. So those things, to me, are the agenda of police reform right now. Indeed. And I'm going to be running to that fire, not running away from it. A lot of political leaders run away from it, or, as we saw our president do, shoot off tear gas so he can get a photo op at the church. Right. We've got to be judged by our actions on those things. And by the way, when I bring those to the chief and the commission, we've got green lights on those. So hold tight for more talk about that in the coming days, but this is the moment to prove it. Shifting resources to investments that keep peace and building accountability even more. LA has a good record, but not a great record yet, because no place in America has a great record. But that's what we have to be striving for, being 100% and being as good as we can. And to me, we're not close to being there yet.
I truly appreciate that. And it sounds like those are some great first steps to some solutions. And, again, appreciating your time and knowing that it is limited. I would want to end with two things, and one's more of a thought than a question. As a fellow father, I know, and I made this statement out in the public, that my children are scared of police officers. Growing up, I was scared of a police officer. I've never called the police in my life, because when the police are called where I come from, that's someone's going to jail. Someone's going to get in trouble. Someone near and dear to me, we're going to lose them. So in that sense, is there something that we can actually do to, again, I go to messaging, from getting rid of the word police, getting rid of the word enforcing, patrolling. These are things that are scary to this next generation. What can we do for this next generation to get rid of the fear that has been perpetuated on our communities when it comes to law enforcement?
I think that's the core of what this is all about today. If anybody listening hasn't done this recently, or you've done it before, if you're not Black, sit down with your Black friends, especially your Black male friends.
And not just one, have more than one Black friend. Yeah, you got to have a collective group of us.
With an S. But sit down with them and listen right now. Because the depth of pain that is coming forward, I've done this with work colleagues, with friends, and with others, is if you are not moved by that, about what it means, even those Black men in America who somehow make it, the ongoing trauma and burden of something you can't turn off at night. It's not a phone. It's not a TV program you can hit the off switch on. Being Black is being Black. And that should be something amazing and profound and leading in our country.
Indeed.
If we can't get behind Black people right now to let them lead us through this moment, to truly birth a multiracial democracy in this country, we aren't going to get through this moment, America, Los Angeles, police departments, period. But if we can imagine a more hopeful moment and a more hopeful place, and we can say that you should not be disproportionately stopped because you're Black, enact the policies, recruit from our communities peace officers who come from those blocks so they know the people who are there, that have accountability for the bad ones, and anybody who would watch the bad ones do bad things, not just those who commit the acts, then we can restore, I think, what at least the promise of this country has always been, even if the practice has never been. And to me, that should be our goal right now. Look,
Right.
I'm the mayor of the City of Angels, and I'm here to be yelled at, to be prodded, to absorb this moment of pain, and to do things.
Right.
And I promise Los Angeles we will lead. And we
Right.
should settle for nothing less than also following the leadership of what Black male Americans today are telling us to do. Full
Indeed.
stop.
And Mayor Garcetti, I will say, in the past, I have been your Black friend, and you have heard my voice.
My only, I guess.
You got a few of us, and you've heard my voice, whether it was on the air here at Power 106 or through spoken word or music, and you've always been receptive to those messages. But as a friend, I don't want to be the one to say, oh, well, he talked to Nick and he let him off easy. Like, I love the fact that you said we have to hold you accountable. We have to be able to yell at you, and knowing, wanting to do something. People just want to act from all creeds, all colors, all races, all demographics. They want to act. And so when you see your people outside of your home, peacefully protesting, what do you say to those people outside your doorstep in closing?
Well, not just because there's thousands more in neighborhoods all around Los Angeles. I say, I'm proud of you. Keep calling for the justice. I'm walking with you. We are going to lead from Los Angeles. This is not new to us, but this is a new moment for all of us. And we have to do that together. If it's just my pain leads me to only want to say, screw you and screw it all, we can't actually do the work. But if the pain leads us all to say, look and see, from a president to a governor to a mayor to a city council member to a leader in a business environment to a superior at work, or I shouldn't say superior, a boss at work, to the person on the street, to teachers, to our classmates. If we don't all respond to that, then this moment will be lost and it won't go away soon. But to those folks, I would say, I know coming from somebody who then is in City Hall, it's easy to say, well, nothing will change. But change has occurred. Change is coming. This moment should be about making sure that George Floyd did not die in vain. And I will make sure I do everything in my sinews to realize that here in Los Angeles.
We hear you loud and clear, Mayor. He said change has occurred from police officers to peace officers. That's what we're fighting for. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Love. Be
strong,
safe.
Be safe, and I love you.
Likewise. Love you back.